Hello, my Bell 5000 Nation. How's everyone doing today? Hopefully, everyone's having a great day. If not, hope it gets better from here. Hmm. All right, we are back with a new MrBallen video. This one is titled Gruesome Crime Caught on Camera. That's right, gruesome. All right, before we get into today's story, I'm going to go ahead and say, yes, I know it's Friday, and normally we do MrBallen Classic, but in my defense, there was no new MrBallen video for us to do Monday, so I'm gonna go ahead and put this one out in case he has a new one coming out this weekend like he normally does. That way I'm back on schedule. So I didn't want to just miss out on one just because of, the holidays and all that good stuff. So, all that aside, let's go ahead and get into today's story. Go ahead, turn the mics down low, put on something comfy, cuddle up with someone special. Let's get gruesome-fied. New word.
The next time you're out walking around the streets of London, look up. Chances are good you will find a camera somewhere nearby. Because as of publishing this video right now today, London is one of the most surveilled cities in the entire world, with citizens being filmed up to 70 times a day. Now, the reason for all of these cameras is to deter and more effectively prosecute.
I don't know how I'd feel about that. I mean, it is what it is, but makes you kind of feel like it's like some kind of Minority Report shit going on. You know what I mean? Future Crimes Division. I don't know how I would feel about being on camera at least 70 times, like 70 times every day. Like, that would creep me the fuck out. Oh, damn.
Criminal activity. But the vast majority of the footage these hundreds of thousands of cameras all over London capture every day is just normal people doing normal things. But periodically, these cameras will capture people doing just horrible, illegal things. And today, I'm going to tell you the story behind one of those types of videos. Now, at first glance, the video clip, which we're going to play, will not be that shocking. But trust me, with context, it's horrifying. But before we get into that...
Oh, damn. I hate it when he does that to us. MrBallen. It's like, oh, that don't look too bad. What?
that story. If you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place because that's all we do, and we upload once a week. So, if that's of interest to you, in your will, please give the like button a treasure map that leads to a pot of gold. However, replace the gold with a $6 gift certificate to Blockbuster. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. Okay, let's get into today's story.
Anyone else miss Blockbuster? I miss going to Blockbuster. Like, I really do.
On the morning of Friday, June 11th, 2021, in a suburb in the northwest of London, a man named David Klein woke up to his early morning alarm. David rolled out of bed, he got dressed, and he very carefully made his way downstairs to start getting ready for work. As David moved around this old brick house he was in, he was very careful not to make much noise because he didn't want to wake up his roommate, a 67-year-old widow named Deborah Chong. Deborah was technically David's landlord, but she didn't charge him any rent. The two had met in church, and when Deborah had learned that David didn't really have a place to live, she had immediately volunteered her house and told David to come live with her for free. David couldn't believe her generosity and immediately took her up on the...
Heck yeah, that is sweet as all get out. You gotta love the kindness of people. I have a bad feeling though. That was the sweetest pie. Like, someone's gonna die horribly.
offer. And then after he had moved in, he learned that he was far from the first person who Deborah had allowed to come and live in her house rent-free. It would turn out Deborah, whose late husband had given her a ton of money in his will, felt like it was her responsibility and her duty to use her ample
Mm.
resources to house people that were kind of down on their luck. She said it was her way of serving God. Also, David got
Well,
the impression that Deborah just liked
that's freaking amazing. Plus, it helps the people and probably helps her too, having, a little bit of companionship there.
having people living with her in her home. It made her happy. But David would notice a distinct change in Deborah's personality around the time the COVID-19 pandemic started in early 2020. At that time, Deborah, like many other people, was very concerned about this global health crisis and wanted to learn more about what was happening and what could happen in the future. And so the way she did that is she obsessively began going on YouTube and began consuming COVID-19 related content and political content surrounding COVID-19 and the pandemic and lockdowns. But instead of becoming more educated and well versed on what was happening in the world, Deborah's constant consumption of COVID-19 related content on YouTube really just made her feel incredibly stressed out and anxious.
Yeah.
And as David began to see firsthand, Deborah's sudden high levels of anxiety really began wreaking havoc on her life. Years earlier, Deborah was officially diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, which is a mental illness that causes bouts of psychosis, which is like losing touch with
Fuck.
reality. Now, pre-COVID,
Mm. And my mother has that same thing. Like she's got a slew of problems that she has now. And COVID really took a toll on her, having to be cooped up in the house and hearing everything that's going on. It drove her insane. Like literally, it really started to drive her batshit crazy. Like she was going stir crazy. She was getting paranoid over every little single thing. Like my dad, he still had to work, and she got to the point where she was scared for him to even walk back into the house. Which I mean, I don't blame her. I would have been too. But like it was getting bad. Like COVID, it's a fickle bitch.
pre-pandemic, her symptoms were so mild that she basically led a totally normal life. But once the pandemic started and her YouTube quest for information caused that spike in stress and anxiety,
See, YouTube ruined her life, people. Damn YouTube.
it caused a spike in her symptoms. And so she began
Damn.
suffering from frequent and lengthy hallucinations and delusions. One time, David came home from work, and when he went inside the house, he found Deborah sitting at the kitchen table, diligently writing these handwritten letters to various British public figures. And when David asked her what she was doing, she explained to him that these British public figures were speaking directly to her through the YouTube videos she was watching. And so these handwritten letters were her response letters back to these public figures. In May of 2021, Deborah's hallucinations had gotten so bad that doctors intervened and forcibly injected her with an antipsychotic medication. And while
Oh
these
shit.
meds definitely reduced Deborah's symptoms, they also
Damn, that had to be bad. Like for the doctors to just intervene and just start shooting this lady up just to calm her down. Oh fuck. It's not funny, but I'm just picturing it in my head. Ah, blah 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 blah. Stop. Face panties. Oh, this poor lady. Oh my God, I feel so bad for her. I bet the dude that was living with her was scared out of his fucking mind as well, not knowing what to do or even being scared to say anything about anything that was going on because A, she's giving him a free place to stay. And he's probably like, man, it's not my place. For two, what if she flips shit? For three, she's literally like the nicest person in the world. She has gone out of her way to make me feel comfortable in her home. I don't want to ruin her life by saying something I shouldn't. You know, there's so many variables that could go wrong in a situation like that.
Also had some pretty negative side effects as well. Namely, they totally curbed her appetite and they made sleeping really challenging. And so pretty quickly, those two side effects combined made Deborah feel really weak and tired basically all the time, to the point where she sometimes needed David to literally hold her up by her arm just to walk down the street. Now, David, of course, had no problem helping Deborah with whatever she wanted. I mean, she had done so much for him. But David had work, and so he was only really available to help her in the mornings and in the evenings during the week. And so he had actually spoken to Deborah about hiring a full-time caretaker that could live with her and just take care of her at the level she needed all the time. And Deborah was open to it. She actually called a company that offered that service, and they told her they would get someone out to her, but it would take some time before her caretaker was actually assigned to her. Now, David was really pleased with this development, but he really wished they would speed it up. Because again,
Yeah.
every time he was away all day at work, he knew Deborah was home by herself.
Home by herself, getting in her own head, driving herself crazy, weak from having to take the medicine, sleep deprived, probably making her lose her shit even more. Like, no, medicines that help one thing can make things so much worse. This poor lady.
And so he was just so worried something was going to happen to her when he was gone. So after David gathered up all of his things and very quietly made his way from the kitchen to the front door, he paused for a moment and said a silent prayer in his head for Deborah's safety and protection while he was away at work. And then he opened the front door, quietly went outside, shut the door behind him, and headed off to work. A few hours later, David came home from work. He went back inside of the house, and the first thing he did is he called out for Deborah. But Deborah didn't call back, and the house was very
Oh
quiet.
no.
And so David took off his shoes and walked around the first floor, kind of calling out for Deborah as he walked. But again, there was no answer. And so after walking the whole first floor and not finding her, he yelled one more time really loudly, "Hey, Deborah, are you here?" And after hearing nothing, he pulled out his phone and he called Deborah. And as the phone was ringing, he could hear Deborah's phone ringing upstairs. And so he thought, okay, maybe Deborah is upstairs, she fell asleep, and her phone's just next to her on the bed. And so with David's phone still calling Deborah's phone, David began walking upstairs. And when he got to the top of the stairs, he just followed the sound of Deborah's ringing phone into her bedroom. And when he went in there, Deborah was not in there. Her phone was, though, and so were her glasses. They were both just sitting on the bed. Those were two items that
I know I just had like a sigh of relief. I'm just happy like, you know, she wasn't dead. Like she, like I said, she can get bad. Like I was starting to get a little nervous, like, oh fuck a duck. Oh, stressful, anxiety. He needs an anxiety warning on this one.
Deborah would bring with her anywhere she went. And so, trying not to panic, David called out a few more times for Deborah, but again, there was no answer. And so, after quickly searching her bedroom and not finding her, he searched all the other rooms upstairs, but again, she just was not there. She was not in the house. And so, David began calling and texting friends from church and other people that knew Deborah to see if anybody had heard from her or knew where she was. But no one did, and the only people who had recently talked to her said she was totally incoherent, talking about spirits and demons and the destruction of all mankind. And so, believing Deborah must be suffering from a schizophrenic hallucination.
Oh shit, she done snapped. Like, oh damn. Ah, I mean, don't get me wrong. The whole lockdown ordeal, it was god awful. Luckily, I was surrounded by people I love, like amazingly. I have my kids, I have the old lady. My mother and father don't live like too far away. It's literally just a house over. Ah, so I was surrounded by people that I could see regularly. It was still awful. And I can see where someone who was slowly losing their grip with reality would start confusing you know, the pandemic with like biblical stuff, like it's easily done in situations like that. I mean, a lot of people who believe in church and are quite religious turn to prayer and religion, and whenever they have a problem like that, religion plays such a big deal in trying to stay hopeful and keep safe and live everyday life that sometimes they kind of get misconstrued to where she probably felt like it was like the coming of the four horsemen apocalypse stuff, like plague and pestilence and all that good stuff. And people, as much as everyone looked out for everyone else, there was just few people out there that looked out for just themselves. And you go to the store, there'd be nothing on the shelves. You try to do what you can, then some people would try to do what they could for themselves, and you see that you're like, what the fuck? So I can see where in her head, like it could be like messing with her so bad, and with the problems that she has, it got to that point. Oh, I feel so bad.
Somewhere out in the city, David picked up his phone again and he called the police. When the police showed up at the house, David filled them in on what was going on, and the police told him, hey, look, we'll go back and review all of the CCTV camera footage taken from outside of your house. We're bound to see footage.
See, I know, like I said, that would just creep me the hell out. But like I said, I understand because that's amazing being able to, like my grandmother before she passed, she had Lewy body's dementia, and I think it also had she had a mixture of that and sundowners. She had a bad habit of getting out of her bed and just wandering. We'd usually find her in the house, sometimes out in the yard, but it was always scary to think you never got a real good night's sleep. And you know the care that I could give her suffered because I'm tired, I'm exhausted. The old lady was tired, she was exhausted, and that's because you don't get that comfortable night's sleep because you're always worried. If she gets outside, gets in the road, walks 3 blocks over and ends up in the whatever could happen, and you think about all that. In that situation, having all those cameras around, being able to give a little bit more security would have been amazing. So, like I said, I mean, that just makes me feel a little uncomfortable, like thinking, there's like 70 cameras pointing at my beautiful, beautiful, all the time. But what, you know, I don't, I don't, I, they, I, I, I just, it makes sense. Logically, it makes sense. I'm not a private person in any way, shape, or form. I really don't care. I just don't like thinking Big Brother is watching me 24 hours a day. That freaks me out. Okay? Like, I don't care if people see my beautiful face on screen, but what if, I do something minorly stupid? I do stupid shit. To me, it's not that big of a deal. To whoever's around me, it's not that big of a deal, but to whoever's watching, it's like, oh, fuck, no, boy. Boy, you're coming with me. You know what I mean?
Footage of Deborah leaving her house at some point, and then we can just watch where she goes. And so David felt reassured, and the police felt very confident. But when the police went back to the station and began reviewing all of this security footage taken from roughly outside of Deborah's house, there was no footage of her ever leaving the house. There was only footage the day before of Deborah going into the house, but she never left. And so naturally, the police went back to Deborah and David's house, and they thoroughly searched that house, believing Deborah had to be in there somewhere. But despite searching everywhere in this house, in every crawl space, in the attic, the basement, every closet, everywhere, she wasn't there. It would take the police nearly a month, but they would eventually figure out where Deborah went. And to say they were surprised at where she went is a massive understatement. But to understand what happened, we have to go back to the very beginning of Deborah's very strange disappearance story.
Commercial. I know that music. Yes. I gotta get me a little sip of coffee before we get into this commercial. I ain't had a MrBallen commercial forever. What's it be about like security? Do you need cameras? Alright. Y'all ready? I'm ready.
Last weekend, I looked over and I saw old Seagull Lung sitting at his miniature 1999 era
Fucking Seagull Lung. Bro.
G3 iMac, and I couldn't help but notice he was looking a little downtrodden. And when I saw what he was doing on his iMac, I knew why. He was hitting refresh over and over and over again on his MySpace page, and it wasn't changing the numbers. Old Lung hasn't had a view on his MySpace page since 2010. To cheer him up, I decided I would purchase a MySpace view bot and flood his page with tens of views. So I ran over to my windmill-powered laptop and
Did he really say with tens of views?
began slapping away at the keys to navigate to an online vendor that sold MySpace view bots. However, as soon as I clicked on the link, www.thiswebsiteisavirus not an online vendor for MySpaceViewbots.com, I knew I had made a terrible mistake. Unbelievably, that website was riddled with malware, and so immediately my windmill-powered laptop caught on fire and then exploded, sending shrapnel raining down on me. Luckily, old Lung was in the other room and he heard the commotion and he leapt into the room and he pushed me out of the way just in time. And then after the dust had settled, old Lung gave me a big hug and then slapped me right in the anti-tragus and said, Papa, wenn du ständig auf gefährliche Webseiten klickst, dann brauchst du NordVPN. Which of course in German means, Papa, if you're going to keep clicking on dangerous websites, then use NordVPN. And boy was
Holy shit. Old Seagull Lung is smart boy. How many languages does he know now? Sweet baby.
old Lungy right. A VPN, or Virtual Private Network, is a service that keeps you safe when you browse the internet, and NordVPN is the brand name in the VPN space. Not only will NordVPN keep your data safely behind their wall of next-generation encryption, but also, most importantly, they will block malware hosting websites and annoying pop-up ads and botnet control. So, if your online shopping seems to always turn into explosions and other various catastrophes caused by malware-hosted websites, then you need to take old Lungy's advice too and sign up for NordVPN today. Right now, you can sign up for a 2-year plan at a huge discount, plus get 4 additional months for free when you go to nordvpn.com/MrBallen. And it's risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. That's nordvpn.com/MrBallen, or click the link in the description below. Okay, back to the story.
Anyone else agree that MrBallen needs to start a channel called The Life and Adventures of Lung? I mean, give Seagull Lung his channel, bruh. We need it in our lives. I'd watch it.
It all started about 10 months before Deborah
Hold on. We got 10 minutes left. Oh, God, this is going to get weird. Oh, God. Okay. Let's do it.
actually went missing in August of 2020. That month, Deborah met a 36-year-old woman named Gemma Mitchell at one of her church prayer groups. Like Deborah, Gemma was very religious, and so the two women became fast friends despite being 30 years apart in age. Deborah would confide in Gemma about her mental health struggles, and Gemma would confide in Deborah about her house/financial troubles. Basically, Gemma, a couple years earlier, had given money to a contractor to fix up her house, but the contractor had had taken her money, not done any work, and then run off, basically robbing Gemma. But Gemma really needed to do these renovations, and so she wound up hiring a second contractor who did begin work, but during this process, Gemma realized she would never be able to recover the money that was stolen from her from the first contractor, and so when she realized she wasn't going to get that money, she knew she would not be able to fully pay the second contractor for his work. And so when the second contractor found out he was not going to get paid, he stopped work immediately, despite the fact that there was no working heat in Gemma's house, and there was a huge hole in her roof. But Gemma had no way to fix this, and so she and her mom were just living in this house that was just totally freezing all the time. Deborah had been so moved by Gemma's situation that very quickly after meeting her, she offered £200,000 to Gemma to finish the renovations on her house, under the condition that one room in Gemma's new house would be solely dedicated to Christian ministry. Gemma was overwhelmed with gratitude. She could not believe that Deborah was willing to do this for her. And so, of course, she agreed to her terms without any hesitation. After that, the two women began texting all the time about this renovation project. Deborah would suggest paint colors and different things to do with the inside of the house, and Gemma would text updates about the different contractors she had talked to who could do pieces of the renovation. Deborah was always inviting Gemma over to her house, and she even began referring to Gemma as her sister. And Gemma loved it because Gemma actually had always wanted to be much closer with her own biological sister, but they had kind of drifted apart. And so for Gemma, Deborah really did feel like the sister she was supposed to have. But their relationship was about to change drastically. In May of 2021, so 8 months after the two women met for the first time, and 1 month before Deborah would vanish, Deborah was forcibly injected with that antipsychotic medication in order to combat her paranoid schizophrenia. And right after Deborah got this injection, she began treating Gemma totally differently. She basically stopped communicating altogether with Gemma, and then in the rare times she would text Gemma, it was just to berate her about being a hoarder or being too messy and sloppy. Gemma didn't really know what to make of her friend's new behavior, but she knew, Deborah was going through a really tough time, and so Gemma just kind of took the abuse and didn't say anything. When Gemma did try to talk to Deborah by asking about the renovation project, which was quickly approaching on the horizon, Deborah would tell Gemma not to talk about it, that it was too stressful and just don't bring it up again. And then one day, Deborah just called Gemma out of the blue and said, "I'm not funding the renovation anymore, it's over, you're on your own." Gemma felt totally devastated and pleaded with Deborah to please reconsider. But Deborah was not about to change her mind, and in fact, on this call, she would tell Gemma, hey, you should just sell your house. And in fact, until you sell your house, don't contact me. And then Deborah hung up. Gemma didn't know what to do. She felt like she really could not sell her house because it was kind of like a family heirloom that had been passed down for generations, and so it just felt wrong to sell it. But on the other hand, without help, she would never have enough money to fix the house up. And so she was totally stuck, and she felt like her only option was to go to Deborah and have one more conversation and just really plead her case and see if maybe there was some chance Deborah would change her mind. So, on the morning of June 11th, 2021, so this is the day that Deborah goes missing, Gemma showed up on Deborah's porch and rang her doorbell. She arrived just after David had left for work. A few moments later, Deborah slowly
Just so happens arrived after David went to work.
made her way to the door. She opened it up. She saw Gemma out there and asked, what's going on? And Gemma just very politely said, "Would you please let me come in? And can we just talk one more time about the renovation?" And Deborah, who was not very enthused at the idea of having this conversation, said, "You know what? Okay, come on in." And so Gemma would go inside, and the two women would go sit down, and they'd exchange some pleasantries. And then at some point, when there was a break in the conversation, Gemma brought up the renovation. She had actually written out this whole speech about how incredible Deborah was, and how these renovations, if they went through with them, would mean so much to her.
Coming in strong. Should have brought the PowerPoint, but it is what it is.
Gemma and her family. But as Gemma is going through this pitch, Deborah just cuts her off and says, "Gemma, I'm sorry, but my decision is final. I am not paying for the renovation. I'm sorry." A little while later, both Gemma
I mean, it is shitty that she pretty much promised her, got her hopes up, but ultimately it is her money. Like, if she doesn't want to do it, she doesn't have to. I don't think a contract was signed or anything else. There's not much she can do. It's probably not really Deborah's fault. There's a lot of stuff going on up here right now, and things just ain't adding up the way they was previous to the shop. Man, this is fucked for everyone involved.
and Deborah would leave Deborah's house. And there actually is CCTV footage that shows the pair walking on Deborah's street right outside of her house. However, the reason the police did not flag this footage when they first were scanning all of that footage to figure out where Deborah went is because when you watch the footage of the two women together, it actually only looks like one person. It looks like Gemma. But Gemma is wheeling a huge suitcase right behind her, and as it would turn out, Deborah was inside of it. It's assumed that after Deborah was forcibly given that antipsychotic medication for her paranoid schizophrenia, that it really leveled her out. She was suddenly thinking very clearly for the first time in months. And in this clear state of mind, it's believed she realized the 200,000-pound gift she was giving to Gemma, someone she barely knew, was a bad decision. And so she just wanted to back out of it. And so, back inside,
Which is her right. I mean, it sucks, yeah, but that's her right. It's her money. It's her life. It's her decision. And she don't want to fucking do it. She don't have to do it.
of Deborah's house when Deborah and Gemma are sitting there and Gemma is doing her speech to try to convince Deborah to change her mind and Deborah is saying, "No, my final answer is no, it's over." That's when Gemma snapped. She grabbed a blunt object, we don't know what it was, and she smashed Deborah right over the skull and fractured her skull, causing Deborah to fall unconscious and slump onto the floor. And then Gemma leapt on top of Deborah's unconscious body. Gemma pulled out a knife and cut Deborah's head off. And then afterward, Gemma cleaned up all the blood in the house and then stuffed Deborah's body and head into that big suitcase. And then after Gemma stole several legal documents and a copy of Deborah's will, she walked out of Deborah's house with Deborah in the suitcase behind her. Gemma would walk with Deborah all the way back to her house, and then she would leave the suitcase, with Deborah still inside of it, in her backyard. She would just leave it there for 2 weeks, and then after those 2 weeks, Gemma would take the suitcase again, still with Deborah's body inside of it, and transport it 250 miles away to a seaside town where she would dump it. And in that seaside town, some vacationers would discover Deborah's body and call it in to the police. On July 6th, 2021, police would arrest Gemma on suspicion of murder. When they arrested her, they showed up at her house and used a battering ram to smash in her front door. And then when the door finally literally smashed open, Gemma was just standing there waiting for the police as if she knew this was going to happen and she's just waiting to be taken away. When the police would actually go into Deborah's house and search it, they would find a fake copy of Deborah's will where all of Deborah's estate was handed over to Gemma and Gemma's mother. In October of 2022, Gemma was found guilty of murder and sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 34 years. To this day, Gemma insists she did not kill Deborah.
You're a piece of shit. You know you did. There's 50 billion 11 fucking cameras. You motherfucker. Derpy looking little son bitch. Man, fuck you, bro. Oh my. I mean, I get being angry. Like, your house is going to shit. This person promised you a lifeline. And now it's like, no. But deals fall through all the fucking time. And believe me, the house I used to live in, I love that house. Live in that house forever. The house just got, there's so many things wrong with it. It was literally cheaper to get a new house than it was to fix that one. So many things had to be done with it. Sometimes you gotta make that hard choice. Deborah was wrong. Sell that motherfucker. Get you someplace else. People are always looking for houses to flip. You might, mother, son of a, right in the head. I hope someone beats the living shit out of you while you're in there. That's just not my opinion. It's my opinion. Leave your dirty comments down below. It's absolutely fine. I really don't care. I hope someone beats you until the end of your life.
So that's going to do it. If you got something out of this episode and you haven't done this already, in your will, give the like button a
Oh shit. All right, everyone. That was a very good story. Oh my God, I can't believe it ended like that. I can't believe she put this poor lady in the suitcase and then just threw her in her backyard for like 2 weeks. What kind of fucked up individual does shit like that? I mean, evidently her, but I don't know. Just that's fucked. Like she did she plan this? Like was it like, well, if I can't talk her into it, I'm just gonna kill her. She went there after David was gone. She probably knew when he was leaving, made sure she was there right after he left. She went with a knife. I don't know if those were her suitcases she brought with her or if those were suitcases that Deborah had that she just put her in and took her. It sounded like it was either I'm going to get what I want or I'm going to kill this motherfucker and I'm going to take what I want. So she took all the legal documents, will and all that shit. See, safety deposit boxes. Put your shit in there. Don't let people know where that shit's at. People are stupid anymore, dude. Oh, damn, MrBallen. You come in like a wrecking ball, Holmes. Whew. And I bet fucking poor David like blames himself because he wasn't there. Maybe he could have done something. This lady went out of her way to help him, and damn, that's fucked up. Oh, Mister Ballin, you need to oh take it easy on me, bud. All right. If y'all enjoyed today's story, please leave a thumbs up. If you're a fan of the spooky, scary, strange things that just make you rethink ever helping anyone ever again, because fuck. Think about subscribing. I guarantee you, if you've never said fuck before, you will say it. Right after you subscribe, you'll be like, fuck, what'd I just do? As always, be good to one another. I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye. My question is, what kind of suitcase was this? Like, there was a dead body in the suitcase and nobody smelled it? Like, that's a high grade suitcase. I know that's weird to think about, but you would think that if you left a dead person in a suitcase outside in your backyard, I mean, I don't know much about our backyard, but I imagine, it's probably warm and bodies that start to rot and decay smell pretty freaking bad. What kind of suitcase was it? Like, how did no one around them smell this poor lady just dead in a suitcase for 2 weeks? And and she put it in the back of her vehicle and drove 250 miles. It's a hell of a fucking suitcase when you think about it. I mean, I need to figure out what kind of brand of suit. Not so I can kill people, but I mean, shit. That's an amazing suitcase.